Welcome to Suddenly Different, where we explore stories and strategies for life when it doesn't go to plan. I'm Leigh-Anne Charland, inviting you to join me on this journey. What happens when the very faith and family that shape your world shatter the illusion of safety? For Rachel Pietsch, life was built inside a fundamentalist Christian household, a world of strict rules, submission, and silence. She learned early that no was not allowed. Personal boundaries didn't exist, and her own opinions were dangerous. For years, she tried to keep the peace until one day the cracks could no longer be ignored. Her husband's professional burnout forced her to step up, to build a business, and in that pressure cooker moment, she began to see the control and coercion for what it really was. That was her suddenly different moment, when family loyalty and faith collided with truth. When she had to decide whether to keep living silenced or to reclaim her voice. Today, Rachel not only lives free out of that control, but she helps others discover the strength and resonance of their own voices. Her journey is a story of waking up, breaking free, and finding joy on the other side of suppression. Welcome, Rachel. It's wonderful for you to be here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Leigh-Anne. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You have a story that must be told because it will shine a light, I'm sure, for many of the people in our audience, either about their lives or about people they know, and now maybe they'll understand them a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, what was your suddenly different moment, that point where you realized the life you were living under faith and family control was no longer sustainable?
Well, yes, I know the exact moment. I remember it. And even just listening to your description that you read out just moments ago, I'm reliving the whole journey, from go to, all those years and all those different things that have occurred. And just, it's like, yes, that happened. Yes, that happened. And then, I made that decision and then my life went this way. Yeah, it was a very detailed trip down memory lane because you've touched on all of the important things there. So for me, the moment where I found I was in that suddenly different moment was it was a crossroads moment really, because I was staring down the barrel of, do I continue along the same path or do I be brave and risk everything and go with not just what my heart says, but also what my instinct says and what it had been saying from a very early age. Yeah, it was that moment where I was speaking to my father on the phone, and he was bullying me over something, and he wanted me to agree with him on something, and the easiest way for me to just get him off my back was just to go, yes, Dad, okay, fine, you're right, I'll back away just to keep the peace. And he'll take that as confirmation that he's right, and he'll continue to think that way, and I let him do that for my whole life. And anyway, I did the same thing. I was like, yep, Dad, you're right. Let's just call it a day then. And so I hung up the phone, and then my husband, who I love and adore, he said to me, give me the phone. And this was years ago, before we even had iPhones, where we still had a landline. And I said, what do you mean give you the phone? But inside I knew what he was about to do. He was about to call my father and read him the riot act. And I'm like, I've got a choice here. That was the crossroads moment for me. I've got a choice here because I knew what would ensue afterwards. And I knew that if I went down this track, World War III was about to break out. The proverbial shit was about to hit the fan because I knew my family. And so I gave him the phone. And I was shaking with fear inside, but also very excited. I feel the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
I just knew something was about to shift, something significant. And so anyway, he called my dad and said, what did you just say to my wife? And, a whole argument broke out. And, my husband was very He just stood up for me. He said all the things to my father, the things that I needed to have said to him. He set the example. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I can't believe someone is telling my father this. How on earth how do we dig ourselves out of this now? And my brain's going a million different directions. And yeah, things did not end well. My father didn't take well to that boundary being placed. Don't you speak to my wife like that? And fine, I'll never speak to her again then. Just a lot of interesting reactions there. All the reactions that I knew would happen, that I had kept at bay my whole life. So it was a tidal wave, and the rest is history. From that point onwards, I knew that I had to make an ultimate choice about that initial choice I made. I couldn't just say, well, that was just a blip. The can of worms was open.
Yeah.
You can't unscramble the egg.
No.
So yeah, it set off a trajectory it took me a good maybe 3 years of therapy and counseling before I could ultimately decide that my family are a very toxic influence and my mental health was being very, very affected and I needed to keep my distance. It took me a long time.
Wow.
But that was the first moment where I actually took action to say, you know what, this isn't good enough anymore.
So I'm curious, because your husband stood up for you, and that is exactly what our husband should do. And so that is fantastic. But then did you continue on did they speak to you after that, or the door was shut?
They certainly spoke to us,
Yeah.
But it was very strange and very, very disapproving. And in their view, they wanted to sort things out, but from a biblical way. And I didn't agree with their take on the biblical way. And that's where we started to lock horns. Yeah, I had to address their way of resolving conflict, and I had to address how it made me feel and just go, you know what? This is crazy making, telling me that I need to submit to you, or telling me that I'm not allowed to say no to you, or telling you how I really feel and then being told, well, that's just ridiculous. We didn't raise you to feel that way. Just complete shutdown in absolutely every single area. And then being told that you're selfish because they can't actually get you to side with them. And it just keeps jumping around and you never get anywhere. You just go round and round in circles. And it's because they have that fundamental belief that the parents are, they have a position of authority over children regardless of their age, and there's a certain level of respect that is owed to them. And it's like, well, I love you and respect you. Is that not enough? But it had to be demonstrated in the submission of my will. It's that fundamental belief that the parents are the ultimate authority and that they have aligned their beliefs with their view of the Bible and the Christian Bible. And if I was, believing any different, that, not all hell is going to be unleashed on me, but I'm not going to live a blessed life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know how difficult it is to standing up to strong personality parents. I can remember the first time that my father spoke to me as though, he actually spoke to me as though he was about to violently hit me. And I went back to him and said, I don't condone what you do to Mum, but you touch me in any way, and that is the last you'll ever see of me. And we didn't see each other for a long time after that. But I understand that there's got to be a point where you will not be treated like, dirt.
Yes. And I didn't realize just how much it was affecting my life.
Yeah.
And how myself and how I operated in relationships, because I was always under someone's thumb, always giving in to keep peace.
Yes. And you've described that you were feeling like two different people, confident in some spaces, but a silenced church mouse around your family where personal boundaries were never allowed. So, and having those contradictions in your psyche, in your belief system, even in your values, would have been very confusing. And I can imagine you having moments of like mental, like just absolute confusion.
Yes, but you're not conscious of the fact that you're confused at the
Yes,
time. You're
yes.
so brainwashed. You believe everything that's being told to you, but your insides are telling you something else. And so because it's not explained to you what that actually means, you end up thinking there's something wrong with you. And then you start to feel like if you're feeling like you're subpar, or you feel like there's something wrong with you have to hide that, because there's going to be retribution if you show that side to yourself, or correction. And honestly, correction is not, I mean, it might sound like a I'm struggling to get the words out. It's a difficult subject for me to talk about. But, correction is it might sound like a trivial word. It's not.
I
Correction
understand.
can get to your very, very soul, the essence of who you are. So if you show what you if you demonstrate what you really believe and what you really think about something, then you're opening yourself up to a level of scrutiny that can end with your whole personality being hauled over. It touches you right to your very core. So you learn to hide away parts of yourself. And you don't realize at the time, because as a kid, you're not aware of this. You can't be conscious of this, but it's a survival technique. And I learned how to survive in keeping myself hidden away. I learned how to get my needs met from other people. I had a lot of boyfriends when I was in school because I never felt loved and cherished at home. And I remember feeling like, I was dirty or sinful because I had this other side to me, but around my family, I behaved like a good girl. And yeah, it's very much a split personality, but you're never ever conscious of the fact that there is something wrong with that picture. You just assume that you are the one in the wrong, and you just get by as best as you can, and long for the day where you can be an adult and make your own choices. But no was certainly a swear word in my parents' household. You do not say no.
No. I just find it so interesting, and looking through the lens of what family violence is now, and looking at that coercive control. So if you don't have the right to say no
Mm.
ever,
Yep.
then you are being controlled, right?
Absolutely.
And so, and it's really important for our listeners to understand that it does go to the absolute depths of you. It goes into, you live permanently in fight and flight,
Mm-hmm.
because you use that freeze state to
Yep.
hide.
Yep.
And so you really, like, it's far deeper and as damaging as physical violence is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And, having been in a household myself where we had both kinds, like,
I get it.
I really, really get it. So your husband burnt out, and he was part of the same upbringing, wasn't he?
Yes, yes, the same faith. Yep.
But differently executed in his parents'
Yes.
household?
Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely a different flavor, you could
Yeah,
say.
yeah. So fortunately, you got to see a different flavour of
Yep.
what it could be, and you have a different
Yes.
relationship with his family.
Yep. Yep.
And but he's still from stresses of life and work and
Yeah.
all of the things, he burnt out, and you had to step up in the role of
Yep.
provider.
Yep. Yeah.
It's
Yes.
probably still during the period of time where the woman wasn't seen as being needing to be the main provider at that
That
time.
was totally our belief system at the time.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's part of what started to crack that all open, because, we weren't going to survive otherwise. And because hubby and I had a close relationship, and because, we loved each other, and I realized how much I loved my husband during that time because I thought, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to help us survive. I'm going to help him get through this. And he did, to his credit,
Yeah.
and he became a new person. And that's his story to talk about, but it really rocked the boat in terms of that traditional what is a Christian household and what is the relationship between husband and wife. And ultimately, I mean, I started going through therapy not long after he started going through therapy. And I have to tell you that therapy saved us. It was the first time we'd actually looked at it. My family thought therapy was gobbledygook, their words, and we're very, very concerned that we were being brainwashed or, that we were getting the wrong idea. It was honestly was our saving grace. We started to think for ourselves. We started to gain permission to question things, and which led us to both ultimately leaving the faith. And I, I'm just so thankful for that time because, I mean, it's not just an overnight thing. You don't just suddenly go, well, I'm sick of this and I'm just, I'm going to do something different now. It's a conditioning that you're very, very used to. And all of the teachings that you had been taught, you just start to, look at them more deeply one by one. And that takes a lot of time. And every time you make a new decision about these beliefs, you're almost expecting that lightning is going to strike. What sort of consequence am I going to suffer now because of um, deciding to walk away or deciding to, no, I'm not complying and I'm not obeying and I'm not towing the line. And what's going to happen to me? And then when nothing happens, you just slowly gain more confidence in your own ability to make choices for yourself. And things shifted in our marriage in the sense that, we no longer believe that the man is the head of the household and the woman submits. It's a case of we're both in this life journey together as equal partners, and we have a respect for each other, and we don't defer to each other out of, the Bible says to. We don't do that. We defer to each other out of respect for, for example, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. How's this going to impact you? How's it going to impact the life that we've built together? Because that's really important for us. So
So that
it is mutual respect for another person that I have chosen to do life's journey with. So it has a completely different ring to it.
it's so beautiful. And so out of that, I'm hearing you say a really important thing is you learn that the person to give permission was
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
and your
Very much.
husband learned that it was himself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you even more came together with mutual respect and
Yep.
deep love
Yeah.
to reaffirm your marriage because
Yeah.
you'd learned how to give permission to yourselves.
Yes. Exactly.
And so many people go through all of their life not knowing how to give themselves permission.
No, no. And for me, I needed someone to step up for me and break the seal. And that's what my husband did by standing up for me. I needed that. I wasn't going to do it. So I thank my lucky stars because how could that have happened without him and his love for me and his regard for my well-being? And I just really do thank my lucky stars. And it's interesting, going back to, what you end up feeling as a result of that, the real feelings that you feel, the real happiness, the real joy, the real love is a result of standing up for yourself. Whereas, the Bible does teach that the fruits of the Spirit, as in like the Holy Spirit or the manifestation of God's presence in your life or his blessing in your life, the fruit of that is love, joy, peace, patience, all of those good things that we hope that as human beings we operate as and as what we use to treat each other with. I never really felt those to the full extent until I walked away. Very ironic, but yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, they became real for me when I started to stand up for myself and think for myself. Yeah.
that is miraculous. Really.
Yeah. That was my miracle.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
So leaving both the faith system and the family ties, the ones that were no longer serving you, can feel like tearing your identity in two, right?
Go
So what was the cost? Because I'm hearing the benefit, but what was
Mhm.
the cost of stepping away? And what did the freedom give you that staying could never have? And I know you partly answered that already,
Yeah.
but the cost, like, were there innocent bystanders that you
Mm.
can't be in contact with anymore because they've taken the side of your parents?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have cousins who I don't see simply because I know that they've been worded up about what's happened, and I just had to walk away because I refused to gossip to members of my family about what was happening, whereas they chose the opposite. They surrounded themselves with everyone and got all, "Well, this is what's happened and this is all really serious, and Rachel's gone off the deep end, and Andrew, her husband, he's not in a good place, and they're not good together." And at some point I had one of my cousins contact me to ask me if I was okay, and, "Are you okay with Andrew?" And I said, "What do you mean by that?" And she said, "Are you safe?" I said, "Holy cow, what have you been told?" And yeah, they'd been led to believe that he was abusing me and that I wasn't physically safe and that I was being controlled. And the very thing that they were trying to do to me, they were accusing him of, which was
But
absolutely ludicrous.
using their power, so using their power, having lost their power, and
Yes.
then manipulating the story
Yeah.
so that they could in some way control you.
Yes. I like how you put that, Leigh-Anne. It's like they've lost their power, so in order to try and regain it, they got desperate and, yeah, spun a yarn and, yeah, yeah. But we put the kibosh on that. We shut that one down as soon as we possibly could. But yeah, my brother was also very affected. He tried to mediate between myself and my parents, and I said, "Please just stay out of it. It doesn't affect you." But again, they certainly didn't give him the same treatment. They offloaded everything to him to the point where he was going to have a bit of a breakdown.
No.
He had enough. Yeah, his wife had to call my parents and say, "Just back off. Just stop involving him." And anyway, he eventually walked away from his marriage. And he also said to me, before he did that, he rang me and said, "I can't deal with you anymore. I need to cut you off. I don't ever want to see you or speak to you again." And you know what I said to him? I said, "I actually understand. I know the force of nature my parents are and the pressure that they have placed on you to side with them. And I know that you're in such an uncomfortable position right now that you see that the only way to maintain your sanity is to cut me off. It's easier. It's easier because they're driving you that crazy. I understand the draw to comply to them because I'd done it all my life." So I said to him, "I understand. I understand." So he forbid me from seeing his family, and I couldn't see he had 3 girls. They were young, primary school age, and I wasn't allowed to see his family, but he did eventually walk away from his marriage, and his ex-wife is actually my best friend. We were
Right.
able to, as soon as he was out of the picture, she actually came over and said, "I just need to hear your side of the story." And as soon as I started to talk, she said, "I knew there was something NQR about this.
Oh, right.
I
Wow.
knew not quite right." And it just confirmed a lot for her as well. So a lot of healing took place. I started to have relationship with my nieces again, much to my brother's chagrin, but he couldn't do anything about that. But they're all grown up now, and I have great relationship with them. But it's, I didn't see my sister's children for a long time. Yeah, the cost, I would say, it was just losing my family,
Yes.
utterly losing my family, and just feeling completely bereft, but also completely free and excited for the future.
Yeah.
And there was also a level of financial support that I could enjoy from my family at times. I had to go completely on my own and just rely on myself, and that turned out to be one of the best things.
Yep. Because it's like independence is a good thing, right? Being because that assistance they were giving you was just another bit of rope wrapped around you or a chain wrapped around you
Yeah,
so that you couldn't go anywhere. But I
no.
was just thinking when you were talking about, what they were saying about you, back in back probably, before the 1950s, they probably would have institutionalized both you and your husband
Yeah.
into a mental institution because they definitely would do that quite often. Women would be, but if they were saying that you were both mentally unstable,
Yeah.
they probably could have had authority.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but thank goodness for how it is
Mm,
nowadays.
yeah.
Every decade, we are becoming more and more aware of the impact on early childhood, on developing adolescence, on all of those impacts that different behaviors cause,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Very much so, and they certainly weren't considered back in those days.
No, no. Or they were just thought to be normal.
Yeah.
You know, police didn't police domestic violence. They had no, that there was just not even a consideration for any other kind of control,
No.
financial control or whatever.
No.
And
They still it's the family's right
yeah,
to do that.
yeah. So many of us are taught to endure suffering as a badge of honor. So you
Yeah.
questioned that,
Yep.
and you gave yourself permission to see that differently with the assistance of your psychologist. Yeah. So in understanding that more, how do you see that in society? I know this is not a pre-planned question, but
Hey, no.
but I'm just really curious as because you've got this lens, just as I've got, you know, multiple different threads in my story.
Yeah.
You've got this lens
Mm.
of seeing what you had to overcome, look directly in the face and say no more,
Yeah.
and and you know, go against God's will. Oh, no, but I mean, God is love.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Everything is
And
love.
I think God is okay for us to disagree with him too.
He he actually, I think, endorses it because it makes us question.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And it's not because you're being rebellious or willful. It's because you are genuinely curious. It's like, why? And I don't think I agree with that, but that's based on my perception and my upbringing, and all sorts of things can contribute to that opinion. I know I have meat for brains. I know that I'm not the smartest person in the world. I know that I don't have every angle on every opinion, but I arrive at the opinions that I do based on my experiences, and I'm okay with that. But I'm also open to having that opinion changed if I'm convinced that there is, a different way. But you're not taught that that's an option. You're taught that there is one way and that is the way it is. Do not question. It's good for you. And when you ask about, when you out in society, how do I see society now? I see a lot of controlled thinking, a lot of people thinking along the lines of, well, I can't think that way, or I can't stand up to this because of the conditioning that they've had. And it's not just in a religious institution, but it's also family systems as well that are very controlling. Certain cultures are very controlling. And you can recognize it when, you see that the pullback or the fear or the, I can't say that or I can't do that. I'm being very, very general and broad here, but I
Yes.
see it. It's more obvious to me when someone is struggling with that mindset of they're unable to think for themselves on some level. And I still find myself, just sort of thinking, I don't know what I think about that. I don't know. I'll find myself going, well, what do you think? Because I'm so used to someone else dictating that for me. So to have an opinion and to not be corrected is novelty for a long time. And I still get caught behaving that way. Yeah.
But we are all a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, the fact that that you don't have your own opinion on so many things, but
Mm.
you'll explore it, right?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and, you know, having met you multiple times, I know you have very strong values and ethics. So the likelihood of you ending up with the wrong opinion is probably not
Mm.
likely, right?
Yes. Well,
Because
I think
you're
you.
surrounded by people who are open.
Yes. Who you surround yourself with makes a huge
It
difference.
does. It does.
Huge difference. And when you allow yourself to think more freely, and I'm not saying, without caution, I mean, and without any boundaries, I mean, boundaries are healthy, but when you allow yourself to explore and to arrive at a different conclusion and to love yourself more, you can only want good for yourself and everyone else. So, yeah, I've just learned that something that I find is also a little bit difficult though, talking about, society, is it's very difficult placing boundaries because most people think boundaries are a dirty word. We don't like boundaries. We find boundaries an uncomfortable subject. And I didn't even know that boundaries was an option until I was in my 20s. And, it's just something that I've had to grow used to the concept of. But I find that I have to be careful in, I've found this place of freedom, but I can't just expect everyone else to understand that. Yeah, because everyone has their own journey.
And I think sometimes people's response to boundary piercing, I don't know, I can't find words, but so someone has stepped through your boundary because we don't really know where our boundaries are. They've
Hmm.
already come right in too far. And so we are more emotive
Yes.
and more reactionary because
Yes.
they didn't take a toenail in. They took a big foot,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
we're not really aware of them being close to the boundary on the outside. It's
Mm.
only when they've fully stood in it that
Yes.
we really feel it, and we overreact
Yes.
because they're in our safety space. They're in our space.
But it's our responsibility to have set the boundary early on in the first place.
That's right. And so learning to do that, and I do think that
Mm.
children are learning more, and just like in every generation, we go too far and then
Oh,
we
yeah.
come back, right?
Yes. The time just keeps swinging from
That's
one extreme
right.
to.
So I was born in the 60s. So, I was the result of what was happening in the 50s and then what happened in the love era. And
Mhm.
yeah, so, we're all learning all the time about these boundaries, but at least they're talked about now. Children have books that are in children language that explain to them boundaries, which are amazing.
It's unfathomable. Like, we would never have had
No,
that as
no.
kids.
And in your household you would never, yeah.
No,
The
gosh, no.
only book we had, my husband's mother had a manners book for my boys to make sure that they were ready to go and sit with the Queen for afternoon tea. They had the manners book.
Tennis book.
Yes.
Well, did they learn how to treat other human beings from, that manners book?
I think that they from the whole extended family, I think they learnt some lovely values and some lovely behaviour, but
Yeah.
they don't mind a beer. You know,
Um,
they're Aussies. So you've you mentioned to me um, childhood emotional neglect as part of your story.
yeah.
So until you said that, I hadn't heard of it, and I
No.
did have to Google it because I'd not heard of it, and so I'd love you to explain that and talk about how you went from diagnosis to normality around it.
Yeah. So I discovered CEN, childhood emotional neglect, when a therapist I was working with just sent me an email and said, "Oh, there's this article by this psychologist in America. Her name is Jonice Webb, Dr. Jonice Webb, and she has written a book called Running on Empty. And she's written this article. And I think, benefit from reading it. I think you might find this interesting. And, you've heard of, stories of people reading a book or something and then, describing how that really impacted them, but, more than anything else, and that it really described their life and that someone had really understood what they were going through. Well, I had that moment reading that article and I immediately bought Jonice's book and just ate it because it related to what I had trouble putting to words my whole life. And I think I discovered this book about 10 years ago or something like that. Yeah, it's about 10 years ago. Yeah, I knew that like I wasn't sexually abused. I wasn't physically abused, although I was smacked, but it wasn't, I wasn't beaten to within an inch of my life. My parents believe, spare the rod, spoil the child. I think a lot of parents did that back in those days. So I don't consider myself to be physically abused. Um, but but emotionally, I just knew, spiritually, I knew, I knew what was happening there, but emotionally, I could never put my finger on. I remember saying to someone, I'm not sure if saying emotionally raped is the term, but that's the closest I can think of. And then when I read John Ease's work, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. And so what childhood emotional neglect is exactly that. I was neglected emotionally as a child. I had absolutely everything else provided for me in every way except emotional connection with my parents. And you can have a lack of connection with one or both of your parents. And for me, it was unfortunately both. And I can go into, more detail about that, but I kind of feel like I dishonor them a little bit.
Yeah.
I've already said enough
Yes. No, that's fine.
about them.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be slandering their character as
No.
well. That not terrible, terrible people. They've just decided to buy into a belief system that is unhealthy,
Mhm.
and it's their choice to stand by that. But it's one of those things that by recognizing the lack of emotional connection, I could explain so much in my life. And I could explain the anger I had towards the religion that they live by. Because, it just seems like my father was so much more in love with God than he was with me. It's like you have so much more regard for your relationship with God or Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and you don't really care what I think, or you don't really want to know what makes me tick. It just, yeah, it answered so much for me. But there's also, different types of different kinds of emotional neglect. You have parents who rely too much on their children and, are absent. So the kids kind of have to parent themselves and the parents are off doing their own thing. Or you have parents who are, very, very controlling, worried about the rules more, which was what my upbringing was like. So the rules were more important compared to, what I was thinking and feeling. Yeah, there is a cost to that because you grow up not knowing that you're not thinking, that you don't have any abilities to articulate what you feel because you've never ever ever had a feelings conversation with your parents. Ever. What's a feelings conversation? It's like that's a I don't know what's going
We
on
don't
here.
yeah, we don't do that around here.
No.
Yes.
And I remember there's a Sir Kelly Clarkson song, "Because of You," that I think was the first song that she recorded after she won American Idol. And the lyrics in the chorus, they go around in my head sometimes. And it has something to do with, "Because of you, I can't stray too far from the sidewalk. Because of you," it basically, because there's a lot of fear being put in your life. You don't take risks. You don't think about colouring outside the lines because it was never demonstrated to you that that was okay. So I had a lot of hemming in my life that I had to really push past, and throw on the lack of emotional connection. I hadn't developed the ability to know what I liked and to understand how to relate to someone emotionally. I've had to learn that. I'm highly empathetic, but I can be completely switched off at the same time because it's almost like a level of emotional autism. I'm just not aware,
Yeah.
and I've had to really develop that. Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's
Yeah.
hard to explain because people who have gone through childhood emotional neglect, their partners often say to them, "You just seem so distant. Why can't we connect?" And it's because we're not connecting because we didn't know it was an option
Yeah.
and what that looked like.
Yeah. And how
So,
which is why we need sometime an objective third party to help us.
yes, exactly.
Well, I love the fact that you now teach others how to use their voice. I think it is absolutely wonderful that you have gone through this road of discovering your voice, your true voice, and then sharing it
Mm.
with others to use their voice, and not only from a skill point of view, but a confidence and a way of being. I think that's wonderful. So how are you able to do that in your
Um,
business and um, with your clients?
yeah, it's been such a wonderful journey, I have to say, because I've always been a teacher. I've been teaching piano and singing for a very, very long time, over 30 years now, I think. Although I don't teach as much piano these days. I'm all about the voice. I think I had such an interest in the voice. It's interesting when I started to seek it out more. I started to find more of my own voice, on an emotional level. But I also went and got some really decent training to open up my voice, and it was through that I discovered, a specific teacher training program that allowed me to study the voice more closely, and I can actually help every single voice I work with because I went through the process myself and found how freeing it was. I was just determined that I was going to help everyone. So, and I've been doing that ever since. And I feel really fortunate to have found the right training that has helped me to align with that value. And so I combine, the sense of reading people as intuitively as I can, despite my CEN childhood, and having the practical tools to literally open up voices because that really ticks a box for me. It's one thing to have the good intention to help people and say, everyone has a voice. We've got to get our voices out, and everyone has their own emotional journey. And if you find the right therapist, you're going to do well. But there is also the physical aspect of, okay, how do I literally make this happen? How do I physically make this happen? And so I studied how to do that, and the rest is history. It's created such an amazing business for me, and I just know that I can make a difference with literally every single voice I work with, unless there's something terribly pathologically going on that's out of my wheelhouse. But at the end of the day, I just know that when someone breaks down and cries because they're hearing their voice, full for the first time, I know that I've hit the mark. And it's very, very satisfying, very satisfying.
Yes, I can imagine. Yeah, I remember earning pocket money from working in a Chinese food shop and spending that money on opera singing classes when I was 14. And
Full.
so I wasn't a born opera singer, but it was really interesting
Yeah.
learning how
Yeah.
to, sing fully.
But yeah,
So, yes.
I just love the fact that you had, squirreled away your hard earnings,
Yeah.
were determined, to find your voice somehow. That's the beginning of your journey.
That and when I found that the opera singing didn't work, I then went to a speech coach
Yeah.
in Brighton to
Yeah.
learn how to speak more clearly.
Okay.
So, which was great. And it makes a difference. I know when I wasn't able to put two sentences together or form any sentences
Yeah.
earlier in this year and for the last 3 years,
Mm.
I didn't realize how much I missed being able to speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love speaking, and I love
Um,
sharing conversation. I love the feelings that sound makes,
yes. Yes. It's you've just put it perfectly.
because they do. It's beautiful when you know that you're being held, when you know that you're safe, right?
Yeah.
And we all know the teacher that made us feel good in class. There's always one teacher that made us feel good in class.
Yeah.
So anyway, for those
Uh-huh.
listening who feel trapped in a controlling family, faith or cultural system, what first step would you encourage them to take towards their own suddenly different moment?
Find a supportive person. Go and find someone who you know you can trust. If you look for that person, you'll find them. They may not appear to you straight away, but don't give up. Because if you don't have support around you while you start to deal with this, then it's a very, very tough road. Because if you're being very controlled, then chances are they're just going to convince you otherwise as soon as you open your mouth, and that's the end of that. If I think if I can, make the changes that I did in my life, then I think anyone can.
Yes,
I don't know. I just think my situation was incredibly difficult.
yes,
But I'm not saying that anyone else's isn't. There will be even worse situations. I have no
yes,
doubt. But I just know that it was incredibly hard. And if I didn't have the support of my husband, if
yes,
I didn't have the support of a therapist, then yeah, it wouldn't have lasted.
yes, yes.
Yeah. I went up,
Yeah,
down, side this way, that way. I was torn in my heart was shredded. It took me 3 years to work through that
yes.
before I could actually say, "Okay, this is where it's at."
So Rachel's story reminds us that the most life-altering moments aren't always external events. Sometimes they're the quiet realization that we can no longer keep living the way we have. Her suddenly different was stepping out of control, coercion, and silence and into truth, freedom, and the power of her voice. Today Today she shines as living proof that we are not bound to the identities handed to us and that joy is possible on the other side of fear. Rachel, thank you for sharing your journey so openly, for showing us that reclaiming your voice is not rebellion, it's rebirth. And to you listening, may your suddenly different moment be closer than you think. Take care. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
This has been Suddenly Different. I'm Leigh-Anne Charland, and I'm so grateful you shared your time with me. If you felt a spark, a tear, or a moment of recognition, I hope you'll pass that gift along by sharing this show. Take a deep breath, trust your path, and I'll meet you back here soon.